Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. I think we have about 15 folks who are joining in today for the CCSP call. Thanks a ton for everybody who has joined today. We have some timely announcements based on where we are with our discussions with CCPD, as well as where we are in the grant year. So I think we're just getting people on. If you can have your name in the chat box, as well as your organization, clinic system, and which city you're from, that would be fantastic. So Elsa, if you want to walk us quickly through the agenda and any tech stuff, we'll get up and underway.
Sure. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. So today for our agenda, our biggest item will be debriefing from the CCPD Review Committee call that was last Friday, talking about those major themes, the implications for CCSP and our funding for next year, and the funding cuts that are having to come up for CCPD and those next steps in their decision-making process and how we can continue to support CCSP as they have to make those difficult decisions. And then we'll transition to talking of some of our overall program announcements and updates for this last month of the fiscal year and as we're looking towards next year.
All right, that's awesome. So I think we have most everybody who's joining on via Zoom. So thanks also for running through that agenda. If you're only joining via phone, I think Elsa, you went ahead and sent you actually provided the slide deck earlier, correct?
I will be sending it after the meeting with all of our notes. I also am recording this meeting, and so we can post that on the CCSP. We can share the link in the minutes as well.
Okay, very good. So we'll go ahead and get started, and Lori and Elsa and myself will join in terms of our discussion. Please use the chat. If you are joining on phone only, we'll give a minute for people to have thoughts and reactions. So let's talk about the hopefully less than dramatic cuts that will be happening based on the CCPD portfolio. So for all of those who have been through this work with Amendment 35, the Amendment 35 dollars and that are funded, or that is the funding mechanism for the Cancer, Cardiovascular, and Pulmonary Disease Grants Program that we apply competitively for money for CCSP. That money is actually vulnerable during times of fiscal state of emergencies. So at this time, we are considering, and it's likely that a fiscal state of emergency will be declared once the long bill and all of the legislative appointment or the legislative discussions have happened. It'll ultimately take a 2/3 majority from the legislation to move forward with the fiscal state of emergency. That vote has yet to happen, but it is quite likely. So the health department and the people who really look at the Amendment 35 execution of dollars from the Joint Budget Committee have already started making recommendations about what cuts should look like if and when this fiscal state of emergency is declared. So just a quick note, that fiscal state has not been declared yet. It is likely to happen, but when it does happen, the Joint Budget Committee of the legislature has recommended that at this time that the CCPD portfolio at large would get about a 33% reduction. So ultimately, the CCPD Grants Review Committee met last Friday. Thanks for pretty much all of our clinic systems and partners who provided letters of support to talk about the value of CCSP. But ultimately, what they are tasked with in the group is moving almost a $12 million budget to an $8 million budget. And so they're thinking about the strategies across all of the independent grants to basically move from that 12 million to that 11.9 to $8 million. So basically, they would have a bit of a fund balance that would provide a buffer, but ultimately they are really having to make about a $4 million reduction. So there were strategies that were proposed about across the board, a 33% cut across all grantees. That is not likely to happen. What I think will happen is they will look independently of each one of the grants based on their portfolio and what each grant is doing in terms of the work. How do they maintain as much budget as possible in terms of keeping FTE supported within the communities? And how do they really think about their strategies and their approaches? So right now, the CCSP grant is a community and clinical linkages grant. And we also are a health systems transformation. So we are basically a fusion of some of the strategies that are really there right now. We have done a lot in terms of this sort of work, from the health navigation workforce development, the workforce development around all of you being compliant with the CCPD and the CDPHE requirement for workforce and task forces moreover. But before we get into the strategies, also do want to go back one slide. What I wanted to just say is that overall, the grant portfolio was ultimately looking at health inequities, health equity, reducing chronic disease throughout Colorado. What are the evidence-based strategies, increasing reach and impact and collaboration? These are the areas that were scored upon. What I will tell you is that overall, CCSP has done a really great job of meeting all of these objectives. Most of the money goes out to all of you in the community and the clinic systems. So I think we're well poised, and we've done great work in this area, and we're probably, and from what I understand, one of the highest performing grants within this whole portfolio. So I think what you've all done to reflect this great work, that it has been noted with the CCPD Review Committee as commendable, but again, they're looking at a $4 million cut. So ultimately, we will have some level of cut, but we're really trying to show the value because we are really firing on all cylinders to meet these priorities that are in the grant. So let me just stop there. I would have people use the comment feature. I would have folks come off mute. Lori and Elsa, I would have you share any perspective that came out of that meeting about what else we heard. And while you're all doing that, what I would say is right now, they had talked about a 33% cut overall that is needed to get to that $8 million strategy. It's not likely that they will take a straight across the board 33% cut. It's ultimately that they will take some level of cut from everyone and then probably give some more and less based on their reach, all of those strategy impacts that you've seen, all of those pieces around how we are scored to make some definitive decision about funding. So strategic cuts, entire grants could be cut. I don't think that's also as likely, but there could be some of that that's happening. But I think they are going to be looking at some, possibilities or mixes of these sort of scenarios. So we do have until June 12th to go back out into the, to go back with all of you to get comments about how we are performing in a strategic way, where we're moving, and what that looks like moving ahead. So we'll talk a little bit about those strategies, and then we'll talk a little bit about the work that I think, and we can talk, Elsa, a little bit about those areas that we can further describe about our impact in those strategic areas. But Lori and Elsa, anything else you think that from the discussion that we've heard, and then we'll open up the lines for folks to share their perspective. So Lori, I'll start with you. Anything particular also that came forward that you think we need to further address?
No, I think you covered everything, Andy.
Okay. Elsa, anything else?
I think, yeah, you really covered it. I did note here some of all of the different work you're doing that fits into these strategies and approaches. And so I really think that the overall focus of the CCSP work plan really just matches nicely with their strategies and approaches, as well as those priorities, as Andy highlighted. And so there's so many different things that you all can pull upon to emphasize how CCSP has made an impact on your clinic systems and your patients.
So I will say that the themes that I heard come up also around, I think after we all testified, and thank you for I think we had 9 clinic systems from CCSP that were on. So thank you for all who came to show support. We're probably going to need to further amplify that June 12th. So we will be sending out more information about how to call in, again, how to continue to share a perspective with the Amendment 35 Review Committee. we're going to basically go at it again, even more detailed, because this is our chance to stay alive, to be honest. Those strategies that Elsa showed in those right now is that there is a small chance that they may completely cut programs. We do not want to be one of those. I'm fairly optimistically cautious that we're not one of those, but that could happen, and we need to show our support. What I would say is there was a lot of discussion about the role of navigators being in the field, specifically around food security, and then the idea that elective cancer bans have happened, and that we have a lot of pent-up demand. We have a lot of folks who are likely, carrying a cancer diagnosis who haven't been diagnosed yet, or that there is more advanced stage cancers coming. That fell hard upon the group. They understood that. They do understand that we are statewide. I think more than ever, given the events of the last week, the racial and social determinants of health and inequity that are happening within our state and our country. This grant really helps to really think about access to care for vulnerable populations. And I think these are the things that we really need to share, that we are in the community, we are doing the work, we are helping the folks that need that access, and that right now, more than ever, we have to stress our importance, because we're about 4 months out from even elective procedures happening for everyone. But I do have to say that I'm really concerned, and from day one have been very concerned about access to care for particularly those who are uninsured and have Medicaid or Medicare versus privately insured individuals, because those reimbursement rates are lower. We have our work cut out for us, and this is no time for this grant to take a nosedive. So we have to be vigilant. I think we have to share our value. And so we're going to be, again, reaching out to all of you to get back out and to share some perspective with the Amendment 35 crew. So I'm going to just pause. I don't see anything coming up in the chat other than a bravo from a couple of folks and everybody introducing themselves. But anyone who was on the call on Friday, I would welcome you and encourage you to please bring in your insight. So I'm going to shut up for a few minutes and let you all come off mute to have some perspective. And Elsa, I know Casey was on. I don't know if she's on today, and she made some really interesting and good points through the chat. Is there anyone else who's also on the call today that we want to maybe have them share something in the chat? Anyone else specific?
I believe, am I muted?
You're
okay. I believe Lupe Sandoval from Salud was on the call. Thanks for joining. Marisa from Valleywide, I believe you were able to join the CCPD review committee call at one point. Those are the ones, oh, and Irma Gonzalez from Sunrise. Those are the ones that I'm seeing at this moment.
Okay, so any of you folks who'd like to share in the chat or come off mute, no pressure, but if you'd like, we'd love to hear some perspective if you're up for it.
As well as a few of those from Peak Vista were on as well. So thank you for joining.
Okay, so we'll add some time at the end of the call for anybody who has comments or questions. So what's in front of all of you right now is the system strategy and approaches. So again, what I think we're going to do is really talk around what are the strategies and the areas that we are doing really good work, and then fire upon the areas that the review committee was really interested in hearing around, and that's specifically the equity issue. So I think rural communities, the communities and all of you really fall into this area of really looking at the vulnerable populations. And then I think what we're also going to really stress is in terms of looking at our navigation workforce, that we are part of that movement, that we've helped develop the systems approaches and a workforce that can really be there for all of our communities, especially that all of you have been trained in this area and have done this sort of work, that even if we have to have pivots around COVID-19 or coronavirus or the work, that all of you are really in the community with your community and know the community. And in addition to this really big component of cancer screening that we've been charged with, and we will continue to work, that we're really working with a very talented community who has a lot of passion. And most of all has the community connections. And so we're going to really talk about that in a greater way. Elsa, do you want to talk about where the strategies, the other strategies that CCPD has pointed out? We can talk a little bit about that.
And so CCPD really also wanted to know, building off of what Andy just said, how clinics are able to innovate the work in their implementation plans, the work that they're doing, the goals and objectives of the grant in the time of COVID-19. So how you're continuing to reach those populations, get them the services that they need, really sticking to the overall goals and objectives of your grant. So that quality improvement, utilizing health navigation, continuing to build workforce development while also adapting to the time of COVID-19. So as Andy mentioned, we know that elective procedures still are not fully underway again, and that it'll take quite a bit of time for things to continue to move towards regular screening again, but that you all are still doing all of that work, reaching out to your patient populations and implementing all of these strategies, even while you've had to adapt.
Okay, Elsa, can you go to the next slide real quick? So ultimately, the criteria that they're using, again, around these funding decisions are around reach, performance, sustainability, alignment with the strategic direction, and then all the sources and information. This is what they're going to utilize. So I think this is really complicit with what we've talked about so far. Elsa, do you want to do the next slide really quickly? So we've talked about the scenario cuts, what they'll be looking at, and then the next step. So here's where we're at. We are allowed before June 11th, before next Thursday, for another round, as I mentioned, of discussions with CCPD. Each project or each entity is offered an opportunity to provide written comments. So CCSP as an overall program, we will be really addressing those key components that are going to be made in terms of identifying the strategies and like what are the strategic components that each group will be scored upon, and then share a little bit about the robustness of the work you are doing, sharing a part of the work and the flavor and how we're really helping at the local level, state level, and this is also bubbling up to the national level to help inform work. At this time, we do ask again for all of you to come to this review committee. I know that's a lot of commitment. Again, this is probably one of the last opportunities that we really do have for public comment and for appeal. So if you or your team can also dedicate time, again, next Friday, we'll send those connection information just like we did for last Friday. But in speaking with our team today, what we will do for each of you is we are going to provide a segmented piece. Also, do you want to go back 2 slides, where we will outline ultimately the areas where we think each one of your clinic systems have specific data and information to help around impact on advancing health equity, the reach, the impact and effectiveness, performance, what you're doing around sustainability, and how you're really helping promote the work line and workforce around health equity. And then talking a little bit about some of the, I think some of the highlights and benchmarks that you and your community have really helped set forward and that you've really made great strides and success. And so we are going to go ahead and draft this for each one of your clinic systems as a starter to help really respond to these very specific areas. So in the first letters of support, we went a little more wide. We talked about the general need, but I do think it is time where we start to dig in to show what you guys are actually doing with each one of your communities. We know that you're busy. We know that you have a lot going on. So by Monday, if not before, you should have a 1-page version with highlights, information about what we think from the program that could be helpful. We would ask all of you with your leadership to review these, to make comments, to make edits, to add no more than 1 page. And then we need to get these back out to the Amendment 35 team before Thursday. But we do know that it's a bit of a lift, but we want to be very specific with them about how you are really doing the work in their community. So we're going to roll up our sleeves, spend a good bit of time in addition to probably the day-to-day to get this out to all of you so that you have, each of you have something from your clinic systems to submit to the CCP to review committee by next Thursday. And again, I just want to stress, This really could be the end of our program if we don't put the pedal to the metal. And I think by virtue that there's over 25 of you on the phone today, even in this time, I think it says a lot about the program and your commitment. So I really want to say thank you to all of you. We will have limited time for comment. We'll try to make sure we do a better job of making sure to understand who's on the phone and represent our whole collective. But thank you so much for the effort, but we probably can't give up just yet. So I'm going to pause. We'll move to our next agenda item, but again, we have a chance and I think we're well suited to continue on, but any additional money that's lost is money that doesn't come to your community. So that's where we are. Lori, Elsa, anything else in closing? And again, I would encourage anybody to use the chat feature about your thoughts, your feelings. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot any longer per se, but if you have feelings or thoughts, let us know, or an idea about an approach that you think would be effective after hearing all of this, just keep us posted. So Lori, anything else from your side about this before we move to the year-end work?
I don't think so, Andy.
Okay, Elsa, are we good?
I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we'll move us on for our agenda. And again, huge thank you to all of you guys for all your commitment. So Elsa, what else do we have for today?
So we just wanted to provide some program updates in several different areas of the grant as we're now into our last month of this fiscal year. First thing, I really just wanted to give a huge congrats to everyone who's passed the registry exam over the last 2 years of the grant. And in this last exam that was in May, all 7 of the CCSP navigators who took the exam passed. So huge congrats to everyone. Really, really thank you so much for putting in all of the work with the training and preparing and taking those very long exams. So we really, really appreciate it, and we're really excited for you all. Transitioning to evaluation, I've been in contact with several of you, and so the audits, I am continuing to work my way through them with all of the CCPD review committee things happening. It's been a little slightly more delayed. I was hoping to get them all out by the end of next week. However, we have about half of them back to clinics. I'll be continuing to send out those results through the end of this week and ask that once I send those out, if there's corrections to be made, you get back with me within a week so we can just make sure all of your data is accurate based on the audit. But I would say things are looking really great this year. We so far have about a 95% accuracy rate for the audits this year, so an improvement from last year. So huge thanks to everyone for all of your work on that. I know it is tedious. Also for evaluation, with us approaching the end of the year and our required reporting to both the state evaluation team, which is led by Kaiser, as well as CCPD, for all evaluation data that you have by June 20th. So that's for anything that's updated based on the audit from earlier months that I'll be helping you correct, as well as any additional evaluation data for May and June. As much as you can submit in Qualtrics by June 20th is really helpful, because we have to submit our first round of evaluation reporting for the year by June 30th to Kaiser. And then for anything that comes after that June 20th date, our absolute end of the year deadline needs to be July 10th for end of the year reports to CCPD that are due July 15th. If there's any barriers to that, please just reach out to me and let me know. But thank you so much for all of your work on evaluation here at the end of the year. I know it does come down to the wire. And we will have those results to share with you in July as soon as we have everything in place. And then at our July monthly call, we will be able to share those results from the patient satisfaction survey. Thanks again for sending all those out. We have about 50 of those back from patients this year so far. So thank you very much. Being away from the office, I've only been able to check on that data once so far. So that's everything I have for those two pieces. I'll turn it over to Lori to talk about our fiscal updates.
Had to run back in here, had to check on the husband. So my husband took a nasty fall this weekend and I'm playing nursemaid to him, but that's okay. So yes, nothing's changed with year end. The deadline is still July 14th. All invoices need to be to me by that date. If there's some extreme reason why you can't get me the actual invoice, I at least need a number of screens for either the month of June and including anything else that may have come up in your audits, anything you need to make up for. I need all those numbers by July 14th. And because of our deadlines, there's no way around that. Hopefully everybody that's asked for reimbursement, those are all in the works, so you should be getting those pretty soon. And as far as going forward and screening, I'm going to leave that up to Andy to talk about. Not quite sure what to say on that at this moment in time, but for billing, you could always get me by email. I'm still here.
Perfect. So Lori, around the, in terms of screening, I would say that we have resources given the pent up demand and need, that we would say that as this elective ban and procedure is moving away from, I think a lot of the clinic systems and sites are with your partners, up until June 30th, we encourage you to navigate away. Lori, in terms of the resources that we do have, and I think that most sites are, of course, a little behind in allocations given the almost 3-month time frame that we're seeing lower numbers. Any specific instruction about submission of those navigated so far, Lori, as we come into the final year, given where we're at in the budget?
I'm not sure I followed you on that, Andy.
So explicitly, Lori, I guess if people are just now picking up, if you're lower than your allocations, we encourage you to continue to try to.
Absolutely. And we'll no doubt be able to pay for everything.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure.
Any screens you've done this year that you have not billed for, be sure you do it, but just do it before July 15th, please.
And if you have people, you have a lot of capacity at your center with this system that you can navigate people into screening, even from the rest of this month that is left, pedal to the metal. And Lori, as you said, if there's people you haven't billed for in the year, we have the capacity to likely pay for all of that. So, okay, Lori, Elsa, anything on the fiscal or billing side? Anything else?
I will mention that everyone who took the registry exam in May or March, I have followed up with all of you to get the information for reimbursement and a reminder or two. So please get that to me as soon as possible so Lori can get that entered into the system and we can get you those reimbursements.
Okay. And then Elsa's going to talk a little bit about the sustainability and our progress on that work. What I will also say is that when you see these reports that we're putting together that talks a little bit about your movement in terms of building capacity and sustainability, we will be integrating that into the discussion that for those notes that will go to CCPD. In addition, I think to really looking at cancer screening as an area of concern, rural communities, medically underserved communities, communities of color. I think the other thing that was mentioned is ultimately that eye towards sustainability and like, what are we doing to really think beyond grant and foundational support? How are we going to keep the navigation workforce supported? So that will be part of what we do discuss from the program overall. And then when you do see the summary of work, we are going to weave that into the discussion. So these sustainability plans and working those will actually be seen by the review committee as a huge bonus. So Elsa, do you want to talk about where we are with the status of that this year so far? And again, that will be something that we do mention deliberately in these notes about our progress. So where are we with sustainability, Elsa?
So we have met our goal for the year of 10 clinic systems taking that PNSAT assessment to look at your capacity for sustainability and really putting together a sustainability goal and a step-by-step plan, which can be pretty simple or more elaborate based on capacity for how you're going to meet that goal. So huge thanks for everyone for all the time that you've put into that. We were trying to do monthly check-in calls or every other month check-in calls at least once per quarter, but since COVID we have put that on hold because we did want to be respectful of the priorities with addressing COVID and everyone's time. We do plan to resume those next year if we can. But for now, we really do need to know if there's been any updates on your work in the last few months or from whenever we checked in last. So I will be reaching out to clinic systems just to see if you have any updates, checking in on based where I know that we left off and just seeing what those next steps are. We know that there might need to be some changes to what your priorities are for sustainability based on the recent time period with COVID, as well as any changes in funding we might get. But we really are seeing that capacity building and are here to continue to support you with that sustainability work. And so as Andy mentioned, it really is integrated into this reporting to CCPD of our progress so far, and also just really thinking about how we can make this work live beyond the program funding. So thank you very much for all your work on that, and we will be reaching out with you just to touch base, trying to send those out by the end of next week so we have something by the end of our year reporting. So
Okay. So with that, also, what else do we have on our agenda today?
And I will actually add one more thing about sustainability before we move on. So if we do have enough of our funding to continue on with this work next year, we are going to have all clinic systems take that PNSAT capacity exam one more time just to see how things are changing, if there's any adaptations to be made, because we know this is an iterative process and we just want to see how things are shifting. So I just wanted to put that out on the radar ahead of time, that those assessments will happen one more time next year.
And if we do stay funded, particularly, we will have resources again for the clinic systems who are either starting or haven't been reimbursed for sure. That's one of the things that we've asked for, but we'll try to make sure there's resources and dedicated time for you all. So we'll see how that shakes out. So in closing, I do want to just also just say something quickly that I've been very involved, and Elsa's been engaged in some of the discussions as well, thinking about the COVID collaborative and where we're going to see hopefully some additional rollout from our state and federal as well as local partners in concert with local public health agencies, COVID tracing, COVID investigation, and looking at the resource coordination. So we've been having some discussion about the workforce of navigators and community health workers and where does that fit. So please be on the lookout. We will be sending some information in the next couple of weeks about a little bit of a state of the state, about what's available, what's being built. There's also going to be something that I'm helping lead out for a regional listening tour on behalf of our governor's office, as well as working with the COVID collaborative and then what's happening with our state health department, to give folks in communities an understanding of what's being built, where there are resources, and where we think we need to advocate for more resources as it relates to the COVID-19 response in terms of an emergency response and the work that all of you guys are already doing in certain situations, knowing that there will likely be spikes that ebb and flow throughout the state, but also then thinking about how do we work in the case investigation and case tracing. And I know that all entities are set up or will be serving in that role. But there will be some work, I think, around resource coordination where navigators and community health workers will play a role, as well as that, that connection in communities to other partners. So that's going to be rolling out. More to come on that. We're spending a lot of time thinking about building that out. and being responsive to that component. So more to come. Thank you for those who provided input so far about your work, and then what needs to be built in for additional supports as we help manage the current situation, as well as what we're seeing maybe spikes later this summer or fall, and getting ready for flu season next year. So more to come there. In terms of looking at opportunities, Elsa, do you want to talk about the additional learning and connection, basically education, support, and networking opportunities?
Sure. So we continuously learn of more opportunities for you all. So here are some of those that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. Tomorrow we do have our CCSP 101 from 2:30 to 4:30, and that's really just going over, again, the basics of navigating for CCSP, the components of the program. So really geared towards newer navigators and other staff members who are newer to CCSP or want a refresher on the components and what it really means to navigate for CCSP. So I will send out again in the notes from this the Zoom link for that and these slides. Then next week on the 17th from 12 to 2, we're co-hosting a virtual regional meeting since we weren't able to get out to some of your communities this year, to all of them as we had hoped. And this one will really be focusing on navigating LGBTQ populations for cancer screening and other health needs. And this is co-hosted with our Cancer Coalition, ACS, and WWC CPED. So Jennifer Woodard, who did a lovely and interactive presentation last year at our annual meeting, will be returning again for this meeting. And there will be first a all group presentation, and then breakout groups that will either be by region or just based on people's different communities that they work with or type of clinic system that they're working in. So please register for that meeting so we know who to expect and how many people are attending from each different region, but really trying to make that one very interactive. And then next week, PNDC and AOPYO are starting a Tai Chi series through Zoom. And so that will be happening on the 2nd and 4th Fridays in June, July, and August from 12:30 to 1. So a quick Tai Chi break. And so they do ask that if you can to register to give an idea of how many people are going to be on. But that's a great mindfulness activity, and I hope to join at least a couple times. And then finally, we also did want to share that UC Health is doing a webinar this week on the 11th from 12 to 1 on ethical issues in caring for transgender patients. And so there's a Zoom link for that one as well.
Good deal. Everyone, I need to run shortly, and I think we're at the close of our call too. So again, any chats, anything that you wish to share, but I just want to remind all of those, I think there's people who are coming in at the end. We do have a huge opportunity by next Thursday to continue to advocate for CCSP. Be on the lookout for Elsa and myself sending you very targeted approaches to information and background from your systems, from your communities, that we think will be good fodder, specifically around the areas that CCPD wanted to know more information. And then you are welcome to edit those, to add, to detract, but we are going to try to help give you some flavor of what the review committee specifically wanted to know from programs and communities and partners. So if you please would be on the lookout for the week. We'll try to have all of those disseminated no later than Monday, if not before, but those will have to be submitted to the review committee by Thursday. So we will send those along with instructions about putting that on letterhead. For many of you who submitted the letter of support initially to Amendment 35, it's the same address, but we'll try to do as much of the heavy lifting around the detail and data, but we'd love for you to add stories. We'd add for review of that information, if there's pertinent data that you'd like to submit in relation to that work, as long as it's about a page. We really need the review committee to see all of the work throughout Colorado. So a huge thank you in advance. I think we had most of our clinic systems and about 10 or 15 of our partner organizations go to bat for us last Friday. Thanks to those who spent the time on the call. Again, June 12th is that time for us to continue to advocate. And it's one of the last opportunities that we will really have for public showing and public comment. So a million thanks. Elsa, anything else we need to cover or anything else? Because I need to quickly move to another meeting, but are we good to go?
I think that's all for everyone. So we will give you the rest of your hour, Beck.
Okay, great. And a million thanks. Lori, anything else as we close out?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Au revoir, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks so much.